Hello, guys.
Hi, sir.
How is it going?
Shambles, sir. Shambles, as always.
Hold on. Just let me fix my sound device here. Yeah. Right. Repeat what you were saying.
Shambles, as always. We're in shambles.
Hang on a second there. Let's see. All right. I think it's good now. All right. Somebody speak again. Let me get the audio test.
Can you hear us, sir?
Yep. Loud and clear.
Sir, Candice was saying that we're in shambles, and I second that statement. Wholeheartedly agree.
You're in shambles. Shambles. What does that mean?
Sir, it means we're cut up, we on the verge, I don't know, not at the best.
So why
I third that, sir.
why are you in shambles? What caused the shambleness?
So I suppose it could have been like the piling up of schoolwork.
Sir, the file. So it's boy, it hard work. Like I can't apply materials or anything like that to it. So it's kind of I have to model everything over. I try to utilize it as is. But I don't necessarily like the end results so far.
Well, I mean, that is also a part of the process of this exercise. The idea is that you have to work with various file formats and do various conversions in order to manipulate the file. So in doing those conversions, there are things that won't go exactly according to plan. So, I mean, give me an example. What software are you trying to use it with that you're not getting through with?
So I use Revit. So like I can't really apply materials to the walls.
Right. Because it's not a native Revit object.
Yeah. So like even when I export the sections, or because I was doing a sectional elevation, and it is like it's a mess. I mean, you'll see it within my presentation still. So
all right, no problem. And remember that I mean, this experiencing now, you will experience it. I mean, it could be that you need to get an object inside your drawing, and maybe the file isn't natively Revit. You know what I mean? So whatever experience you're experiencing now, that's what you're experiencing in the wild. You know what I mean? It's not practical for you to like remodel everything. I mean, I've seen people done it for this assignment in the past, but in terms of practicality, like I'm sure you can experiment with another feature from another program to get something that you want. But anyway, we'll talk about that as we go along. But we need to get through the presentation so that we can move on, right? Because there was one more topic for us to cover for assignment one, which I'm hoping to do this week. And then we need to start to look into our second ticket item, which is the measured survey. I'm hoping to hear back from the sites that from one of the sites that we are to visit. I think that's on the schedule for pretty much nearing the end of next month. So we have about like 3-ish more weeks to go before that happens. So we do have one more mimic to work, 2 more mimics to work through. So we need to finish with this presentation so we can start to look on the other mimics. And I see quite a number of persons in this class compared to last class. So I hope that's good news. All right, so we definitely don't want to be here till night, so we're going to keep everything quick and tight in terms of the time frame for the presentations. And then after today, when you see your grades, I'll say another disclaimer again for those that weren't in the last presentation. Okay, let me just bring up back that thing, that slide. Oh, there we go. All righty. Right, so this is what we discussed the last time, just in case some of us are just here following. So what we are, let me just fix up my monitor screen here. Give me 1 second. Yeah, so what we are looking at is, this is the kind of format that we are going to tackle the presentations. So these are the criteria for the presentation: workflow diagram presentation, understanding of the process, identify visualization features. Remember, we spoke about those guys. So your ability to identify those, and those items is what we will be marking in the presentation. That's these items here, right? These grades are one-time grades. So you get these grades now, they're written in stone. These grades, as you can realize, they are really not necessarily based on the final product. They're kind of just based on what we present or what we talk about today. All right. Then now, these grades here with the mimic, your communication objective, your how you mimic lighting, shadows, and shade, how you mimic color and tone, and how you mimic the context, the environment, and the view and scale. Now, these criteria go for all 4 mimics, and they mean different things for each mimic. So for example, with a floor plan, and let's say that we're discussing floor plan and we're talking about how you mimic scale and angle. Meaning, does the floor plan sit in the middle of a ton of foliage and the floor plan is small, or is the floor plan really large? And what's the ratio of the floor plan? Is it turned more vertical or horizontal? Things like that has to do with the view. But for example, that same criteria for, let's say, the section might be, how is the section taken? What is the view? Is it a 3D perspective or a 2D perspective? Is it sitting on a big base and then the building is sitting in the middle, or is it that it's based on the view? So that's just a rough example. These items here, you will be graded on it today, but these grades can be improved. Meaning, if you notice that when you did the mimic, there was an issue with your color and tone, let's say you didn't get a high grade in that, well, you need to fix it up. And then we're not going to have another presentation. There's simply going to be one deadline date and you just hand in. Now, when I go and I notice that there is a hand in, if I will mark the updated work that you handed in. Don't worry, if the updated work looks worse than the previous one, I'm not going to worsen your grade. All right, I'm simply just going to use the highest grade. All right. Does everybody understand this grading criteria?
Yes, sir. Follow.
All right, especially those who were not here last week. This would have perhaps been new information to you. So this is how we will be marking this assignment. All right. So the key thing is that if you are not here for the presentation, then you lose out on all of these grades. All right, because this is not about a hand-in, it is about talking and discussing. And we learning from each other. Last week we learned about some new programs that some persons use as an alternative to Photoshop, and that was cool. I didn't know that, so I'm learning stuff just as you're learning stuff. All right, so how we're supposed to do this is that I'm going to look in my submission list, and your work needs to be there in order for us to have the presentation. Another disclaimer is that those of you who are presenting today, there will be a reduction because of the lateness, because the original presentation time was supposed to be last week, Thursday. So some persons handed in last week, Thursday, and some persons weren't able. All right, so right, but after today we are moving on to the next mimics. So today is the last train leaving the station. All right, now we can move on. So I am looking now in my submission listing, and I see a few persons magically appear on my list. So I guess they have just submitted a couple seconds ago. I'm going to pick it by random, and what you guys are going to do is, remember, you don't need to share your screen with Mirror Board. All I need to do is to click on the link, and I will see your mouse cursor moving around, and I'm able to follow you on my screen. All right, so that is how we will present. We're hoping that everybody gets just like 5 minutes. We're going to make this quick. Just talk about your workflow on your Mirror Board. There should be your workflow, your original image, and your mimicked image. All right. So, yep, I think that's it. So let us get going. All right, let's pick some names by random here. Well, firstly, is Jessica here? Let me look at my list. No. Okay. She submitted last week, so I'm not sure what's happening. Morris presented. I think he used my mirror board. Did you use my mirror board, Morris? I can't remember. In either case, Morris is not here. All right, so let's move on. So Donald, are you here? I don't see that. Yes, I see
Yes, sir.
Donald.
Donald's here.
All right, Donald. I see your mirror board link here. Let's take a look.
Yes, sir.
So I need you to log into your mirror board. Oh, I see you. I see
Yeah,
you.
I'm there.
But I'm not seeing your arrow. Do you have their arrow symbol enabled? For some persons, I think you have to click this little icon here. If you look on my screen, yeah, to enable it.
Right here. Yeah, it's not pressing for some reason.
Sir,
That's
we're
it.
not seeing a mirror board on your screen.
Oh, you're not. Oh, why is that? That's weird. Oh, Zoom. Zoom is doing something. Give me 1 second.
Sorry.
There we go.
All right, sir. Can you see the arrow now?
No, let me refresh. It did this with 1 or 2 persons last week. Might be just a Zoom, a mirror board thing. I don't know. It's there because I know, but here what you'll have to do. You'll have to just use your you can still edit that board?
Yes, I can.
Right. So you can just use your pencil tool, which is here, or you can use this. There's a big arrow tool that you can actually use in Miro.
I just realized that it's not pressing anymore.
Right. You know what? I'm thinking that when you don't have access to the board, that's when the arrows don't come up.
Yeah.
I think it's a mirror feature, right? All right, it's no worries. We can still work without it. So just take a couple minutes. We're gonna go. You're just gonna go through your workflow, and then we look at the images.
Yes, sir.
All right.
So first thing first, I selected the images to mimic. So I went for a more inverse, monochromatic kind of floor plan. And the communicative ideas I chose were to show different forms of pedestrian circulation, so private and public. So how I went about that is that I downloaded the Revit file and cut the floor plans necessary. Then I imported the plans into Photoshop and selected a few images to mimic the situation, the plans as best as possible, using them as textures. Then anything that I didn't find as textures, I used brushes to enable to use brushes to get shadows, lights, and also for the trees. And that's how I did that. I just pushed everything together, and that's the plan, and the plan with the communicative ideas as well. Moving on to the section, I did roughly the same thing. I went into the Revit file and selected. Firstly, I forgot images I wanted to mimic. Then I went to the Revit file and cut the model in such a way that it would show the best way to show light and circulation, ventilation, I should say. Then I went and imported the file into Photoshop, downloaded a few textures for show materiality, and everything else was just brushes. And yeah, that concludes my presentation. That's about it.
All right. It's interesting that you found a section that kind of mimics the same technique as the plan. I like this technique. I think it's pretty cool. It has a nice kind of I like the texturing, the contrast of the texturing and using the white to represent the walls. It's a nice technique. I hope you develop more on this. Hope to see some of your works in this technique. So your workflow is kind of Revit to Photoshop.
Yeah, those are the only two programs I used.
Okay, cool, no problem. There's really no right or wrong. There's only best practice. That's how I look at it. Guys, remember that we are learning from each other as well. So if anybody sees something interesting and you want to ask Donald how it was done, now is the time to do it. That's why we are showing each other our various techniques. All right. So Donald, when you exported the Revit file, when you exported the file from Revit, did you get it as a vector or a raster image?
One moment, sir.
Right, but as JPEG or like
Oh, I downloaded it as a PDF.
Okay, cool. So you had to put your drawings on a sheet.
Yeah, put them on a sheet and then just download it as a PDF and just open it up in Photoshop.
So then the filling of the walls, you did that from in Photoshop.
Yeah, I just so they came in black and I just used the Magic Wand tool, selected it, and then just press Control-I to inverse it.
Ah, you just invert it. Okay, cool. Cool. So the furniture and line work were already there.
Yes.
From Revit. Okay.
Yeah, they were.
And what about the trees?
Oh, for those, I looked on a plan. I looked up plan view of trees, and then I downloaded it and I just turned it into a brush in Photoshop.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Oh, so you created like a custom brush.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. I don't think I've ever done that before. Okay. All right. So in terms of look, okay, and one more thing, the communicative section, which is sometimes Mira does this thing where I need to mouse trap. I need to switch to mouse. Yeah. All right. I noticed, let me see, a communicative section. That's pretty straightforward. So how did you get the dashes in? Because you did this in Photoshop.
Yeah. So for the dashes, I clicked the pen tool and then just print broken lines, and then I just went freehand.
Okay, so you use the pen tool. Right.
Yeah.
So there is a pen tool for those of us who maybe use Illustrator to get the lines. There is a pen tool in Photoshop, you know, but I was told that unless you really, really love Photoshop to death. That's why when you would use the pen tool, because the pen tool in Photoshop is so annoying. Oh my goodness.
It's very fickle.
And from the last exercise, a lot of persons carried their work into Illustrator to use the pen tool. So I see that you struggle through it.
I have
All right.
experience with it, so I'm good with it.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, in terms of looking at it, just a quick feedback. I mean, the primary thing that I notice is just your selection of trees. That's one major thing. So for example,
I should make them more architectural trees.
right, because we are mimicking that. So that is what about this grid? How did you draw this grid? You drew it in Photoshop or
Oh no, that was a texture.
oh, you use a texture? Okay.
Yeah, and then just inverse it same way.
Yeah, all right, cool. There is a grid tool. I don't know if it's in Photoshop, but there's a grid tool in Illustrator that you can choose a grid and make it editable. Because if you wanted to edit this, yeah, that would be troublesome. So yeah, so the trees, that's one thing that I would say could need some work. In terms of some final little details, like if you notice here, the interesting trick with how your mimic image did the furniture, that the shadow is really based on the entire furniture item, not the lines that make it up. So for example, if I look here, you can see that for your furniture, it's like it's empty inside, and then the shadows, the soft shadows are generated based on the line and not the whole furniture as a whole. Yeah, you see that?
Yeah, I get that.
Right. So that is like another, in terms of looking deeper, some of the little key features there. I like the way how you got the grid work in it to kind of match, even though it's a different building. It's really just the trees that kind of just need to edit. The only other thing I would say is like when you kind of zoom out and kind of look, you get the sense that well, I guess it's similar, but it just a slight more
Yeah, mine's better.
more gray in terms of the context of
Yeah.
your mimic. Yeah, it's like to the point where your background is almost meshing with the line work, with the white line work. But
Okay.
I don't get the sense that it's doing that in the mimic. So, those are just like slight little tonal things there. And moving quickly, like for the section, I think the section you definitely kind of nailed it. What is your communication objective? It's light?
Yeah, light and ventilation.
I mean, you only need to pick one, but okay. I mean, so
Extra
it's fine
credit.
that you put two of them, so but you really only need one. How did you get these trees? These trees looks very nice.
What, the trees?
Yeah.
Oh, brushes as well. I made custom brushes and then just load up positive to make them go to show like this distance, and I just change the vibrance of it to make the trees a bit more, ominous.
Right. And I can see that you captured the ones that's kind of disappearing in the distance, so that's great. I'll use this opportunity to say that the interesting thing about this exercise is that you are not adding your artistic flair, you are 100% mimicking. So for example, I don't see any birds.
Yeah, that was my signature.
I figure as much. So and that's the thing with this exercise. The point of this is you are selecting something that you deem successful and a technique you want to mimic. So you can't add to it. That's just not the exercise.
Okay.
So if you like this image, you're supposed to like it because you think that it's successful. And for this exercise, that image doesn't need anything else. No flare. So that is one thing I would say. And in terms of the background here, it is, I hope it's not the resolution, but it's more of a gradient than
Yeah,
a
it's fading away. Yeah.
yeah. So while your own is more of a gradient, and your gradient is kind of spiraling out from the center, and this gradient is kind of a linear
Going down.
gradient, right?
Okay.
So you would need to, in terms of your environment, you can see how some of the criteria is pointing to this. Everything else
That's an easy fix.
exactly. So that's why I'm saying, guys, like you submit this today, and you know, if you want to stay with the grade you're getting, that's fine. Or if you want to go in and tweak it, it's up to you. So both of these are like mostly there. It's just some minor tweaks. Is there any questions from your classmates? Do you guys want to know, like, hey, how did you do that thing? Now is the time to ask while we're sharing. No questions going once. No questions going twice. And we're moving on. All right, Donald.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Good to go. And let me just mark this present for today. All right. Next person I see is Hutchins. You there? Okay, let me look at my list. Oh no, I don't see the name. Nope. Okay, moving on. Beresford. I see you're there.
Sir, Beresford is present.
All right, cool. I'm clicking on your mirror link now.
Yeah.
Here it is. And I see your arrow there. That's great. All right. So tell us about this Beresford.
So this is the wait, hold on. So this is the floor plans I chose to use to try to mimic. It was kind of a challenge because it was kind of hard to get the 2D 0.5 features in there. But I started off with the SketchUp model, editing it and cutting it into like the floor plan level. Then because I was trying to figure out how to do the shadows, I brought it over to Lumion, which I used that to kind of render out the floor plans and so forth. But the issue with Lumion is that I couldn't get the right textures for, like, say, the floors and so forth. So I brought over to Illustrator and I kind of copied the floor from the actual floor plan, and I kind of then I dragged it onto the floor for the mimic.
Right, you made it a pattern.
Yeah. And then from there I made the walls, and I made my own windows and doors, and also showing the door swings for the doors as well.
Yeah, I see that.
And then I went over to Photoshop to put in the shadows for the walls, because the shadows from Lumion weren't showing enough. So I kind of made my own shadows by making like a box and then using a brush to kind of put soft shadows along the edges of the walls and some of the furniture.
So okay, cool.
And
Good.
yeah, and also in Illustrator I did the text as well as for the circulation diagram below. I did that in Illustrator as well.
Yeah, cool. You mean lighting? I mean, this is lighting, but okay. I mean, you could use those paths for circulation, but in this plan, I think it's Well, you know what? It
Oh,
could be
this is lighting?
circulation. It looks very similar to like electrical diagram, but anyway, that's besides the point. All
Yeah,
right.
because I saw some of them going towards the toilet. I thought it was circulation.
Okay, yeah. You're right. At first glance, it kind of looked like lighting. All right. You know, the interesting thing about the communication objective is that you have to figure out how to merge it together. And there are a lot of persons when you're merging your communication objective, you might realize that it doesn't fit exactly, or it does or it doesn't, and you may have to do something to it to make it fit. So for example, like this communication objective, I mean, it's fine, it looks just like it, but because of the color, it's kind of disappearing into the floor texture.
Right.
If you get this, what I can suggest is you can add a ever so slight shadow, maybe in Illustrator, not a heavy shadow. I mean, just a slight shadow that you don't even notice, but when you're this far, it will automatically start to pop the orange.
Right.
So that's a little trick you can use whenever you have two colors that are similar and one is being lost in the other. Add a drop shadow to it, but not your typical drop shadow. It's almost like an invisible shadow. You don't see it, but is enough to let the color pop some more. All right. All right. So I mean, in terms of the floor plan, I mean, if you ever come across a situation where, let's say that you're trying to mimic texture, like the floor texture, yes, it works in terms of this assignment to mimic the floor texture, but in terms of best practice, primarily for just the future, it is likely that when you cut this texture and use it, it's going to print really horrible, because the source of where you're getting it from isn't like a pure texture. It's kind of like a already super edited texture.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I
So
agree.
if you were to print this on a big sheet of paper, or even to show it a presentation, you notice that the quality is going to be far diminished. So you would have better luck going to like textures.com. But textures.com, I think give you some amount of freeness. Another one is SketchUp. Texture Club, is that the name of it? SketchUp Texture Club, I think it is. Yeah, and they give out a couple free ones per day. You can even get PBR textures, which is for like more advanced 3D programs. But anyway, 2D textures, they have like a ton, and I believe the low-res textures are free, meaning low-res like 1024 by 1024. Hopefully you'd get lucky. Our textures.com is more premium, but they give away some freeness there.
Okay, I can check it out.
So I would try to find a texture that matches it, and then reverse and then work it from there, even if it's not exactly the same thing, but you would definitely get better quality, Now the biggest thing here is in terms of the walls. Like I see that, like I like your workflow, how you were going through Lumion to get the walls. I'm surprised Lumion never worked out for you, I guess because you took a top view and you angled the sun or something like that to get the shadows.
Yes, sir, but like it was either it came out hard or it come out soft. I don't know why it wouldn't come out. But by the time I rendered it and it came out super soft, I tried to go through it multiple times, but it never gave me the exact shadows I wanted.
Right. And that's the tricky thing with shadows. I mean, and it goes to show, when you see these plans, I mean, in our heads, we can say, oh yeah, man, I just need to go in and render a top view. And then you do it and you realize, oh man, there is more to this shadow. I mean, look how it looks here. And you try and it's just not looking that way. I mean, the softer the shadow, think of it this way, guys. You see, the softer the shadows are, the nicer they tend to look. We tend to associate soft shadows with realism, but the harder it is to simulate. Because most of these shadows are not coming from a direct sun source. They are more like ambient shadows that's been cast. So the trick is that the program that you're using, you would have to try to work more with ambient light rather than a direct light. Because the direct light is just going to give you a nice hard shadow. I can't go into it right now because of the time and we're presenting, but in our next class, hopefully I can touch it a little bit because some of you have some of these types of plans. And you can use it to kind of fix this up, because the main thing that is off here is just the shadows. What happens is that these shadows, they don't really have a direction. Like, for example, if you all right, like even if you take this part here for example, you can see that this side here does not have a shadow, but this side has a shadow, right? So I would say that invest in one. Either you're going to make the 3D program do it for you, or you paint it in Photoshop. But doing both is too much time. Like, you know, because you can achieve this with just Photoshop. It's going to be very manual though. And you just say a prayer that the walls don't change, because that would be, you'd have to do over everything. In Lumion, you have to play more around with ambient light and maybe completely turn off your directional light and work with that a little bit. There's even some tricks that you can use that I can't go into it right now. Hopefully I can dedicate a class to talking about how to get these shadows. Because we need to move on to the next person. So in terms of the tone and all of that, it's great, and the doors and all of that. It's just the shadows that you need to nail for that, right? And oh geez, I didn't remember that you didn't even talk about your section.
Well, sir, I was going into it, but then you kind of worked.
Yeah, oh my, sorry about that. I just realized. All right, go quickly.
All right, so the next thing to have is my sections, which required a lot of texture and detail work. So basically, the first thing I did was I went on to SketchUp to kind of cut the section first of all, and then I took the picture, the PDF of the section in like an angle view, brought out the Illustrator, and then I put in these pattern flooring to kind of mimic the original mimic as well for the roof, not the roof, the background. And then I went on a alternate source to get a shape for the clouds, and then I kind of just like made them white, faded them, and then put a texture to that as well, and same for the sun without a texture first. And then after that, I brought the Photoshop to add in detailed shadows, like added shadows to like the roofing as well as the background. And then I brought out the Procreate to put in the entourage. So I drew in the entourage themselves. So the trees and the people. And then below I put in the visualization features, which are, you know, the sun and well, basically climate in general. So wind and the arrows for the suns.
All right, cool. How do you feel about this one?
Well, I prefer it over the floor plan because the shadows was messing me up mostly.
Well, I mean, I think you pretty much nailed it. What I love is that you created your own. You realize that based on what you said you did with this, if you tried to cut this to use it, I mean, it would just be too low res. And what happened is that it's great when you kind of can create something similar. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
You have more flexibility than when you cut it and paste it. You know what I mean? You have the pieces that made it up. Yeah, and I think you nailed the point of view as well. With this one here, I mean, I know my only like comment with this is that this image, I know it's a bigger building, but it just has a lot more going on. within this composition, right?
Right.
So it's like everything that you need to have is there. You just need to have more going on.
Also,
You know,
like
and
adding
it
more
can be up
people
to
and
your
stuff,
you know, you make it be your own interpretation of how you interpret these things. It could be furniture, it doesn't have to be the exact thing, right? So that's like the only thing. But definitely, like, I love this technique as well. I hope you try it out in your one of your projects. And I mean, this is fairly the communication objective is fairly simple and straightforward. You said you did that in Procreate.
Yeah,
Or in-
well, to during the trees and the people on Procreate, because they were too low res on the original picture, so I had to draw them myself. So those zoom in on the art as it is.
Oh, okay. All right. So then, what's your final output then? It's through Procreate.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, all I'll say is that whenever you're doing these for the future in terms of best practice, I would say you have to pay attention to what your final output is. There's no problem with using Procreate, by the way. But meaning that if you did a whole lot of vector work and then your final output is through Photoshop, then it's going to turn into pixel. So it's just to be mindful of, okay, if I'm going to output this using this application, you know, you want to, so for example, what are the options for printing with Procreate versus what are the options for printing with, I don't know, Photoshop or Illustrator or whatever. So it's just to keep that in mind. It's not right or wrong, it's just to know. Because your final output matters, because that's the one that's going out, you know?
Well, yes, sir. Fortunately, Procreate have options so you can, like, you know, export it in different sizes. Like you can even put it, you can export it as Illustrator files and Photoshop files.
Oh, cool. All right, good stuff. So yeah, I think you definitely nailed this one. What I would say is, who went before this again? It was Joel. Remember that you have to put your you have to identify the different features, visualization features. So remember to put that on your board because one of the criteria asks for it. All right. So if I don't see it, I won't know it. I might not remember. You might say it, but then I might not remember it. So you need to actually put it there on your board. All right. So good one with this one. Let's keep it moving. And
Thanks. Sir.
next is Monday.
Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah, man. I can hear you loud and clear.
All right, sir.
I'm clicking on your link now, and here we go.
All right, sir. So I chose this image I saw on Pinterest because I've seen this technique multiple times before and always thought about it, how could I do it? So I finally got the chance to.
All right. I'm happy.
Yes, sir. So the first thing I did was I cut the section in, I put the floor plan in SketchUp and brought it over to Illustrator where I did most of the lines, putting the textures for the floor plan. Did most of the things in Illustrator and like the floors, the texture, the pattern for the floor and stairs, and also created the trees, the steps, the textures in the grass and all that in Illustrator as well. And then brought it over to Photoshop where I added this grain texture for the floor plan. And then I put it back in Illustrator to do the communication objective with the circulation.
Oh, that's really interesting. Looks like you had some fun in Illustrator.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sorry, I got lost in your section a little bit. Okay. Yeah, I think the key thing to nail in this is especially the colors and the patterns. All right, let's just move on. So for this section now,
So for the section, I did the similar thing. I cut this section in SketchUp.
Mhm.
Then I added the cut in the section cut in the building and the ground as well in Illustrator, and carried it to Photoshop where I had to add the entourage and other things,
Mhm.
as well as made the shadows, and the wall coloring that the mimic had. And then I put it back in Illustrator where I added the sun path, the wind direction, and the numbering, as well as text.
Okay, my only question with this one is, I mean, but why did you use Photoshop to get the shadows if you cut the model from SketchUp?
So it's more of a thing that I forgot to turn it on, and then I was already working through, and then I was like, oh no. So I just put them on in Photoshop.
I mean, the shadows in this are fairly simple because it's a straightforward building. But
Yes, sir.
in terms of best practice, though, if you remember those very long videos when we were talking about passes,
Yes, sir.
where you can have a pass that just has line work. You could also have a pass that does have shadows, and then you
Oh,
can
yes,
just
true,
play with
sir.
transparency between them. So that, I mean, you don't have to like figure out like, okay, there's gonna be a shadow like halfway here, and you can grab the shadows only. Just make sure you don't change your view, right? You can grab the shadows only from SketchUp.
Yes, sir.
Let's see if this helps don't work, right?
Sorry, I'll remember that. Sorry.
But just make sure you save it out as a separate pass, you know?
Yes,
so you
sir.
can control it. All right, so in terms of the floor plan, I'm hoping that I see this again in your design studio.
Sorry, I
I
might
don't
use it
have the-
for one
you have-
project.
Right. Your trees. How do you get these trees?
Sorry, I made them completely illustrated
Wow,
by
you
tracing
like
a pattern.
okay. Well, guess what? Make sure you save them. All right. You need to like have a folder that you save, like maybe just take out little clusters of it and just put it on a blank artboard.
Yes,
Because
sir.
if you really like that, you want to reuse it, you can just draw for it. And you don't even know, it might just become like your kind of signature style. Like definitely like the paint, that natural paint work in here. This is just a path with a film.
Yes, sir. Just a path.
Okay, cool. Yeah, man. So that is great. And then these patterns here. In your workflow, I mean, I know you say you created the textures in Photoshop, but was this an actual pattern?
Oh, yes, sir. That was for some of the grasses I realized in the mimic. It had circles and polka dots in some of them, sir. So I tried mimicking that in Illustrator, yes, sir.
Okay, so this is an actual pattern then, meaning
Yes,
you
sir.
just like repeat it forever.
Yes, sir.
And that's great. I mean, some of these you need to standardize them and save them, because like if you can use this as your way of representing like grass in your kind of your own technique. And because it's a pattern, and this is what I've been saying about recreating rather than copy and paste. If you try to like, I don't know, like copy parts of this to like Photoshop it and reuse it, it wouldn't be as clear, and then you can't develop it, you can't expand on it later on. For a totally different project, you could grab the same elements and reuse it, because these are all original. You know, you have the blueprint for these techniques.
Yes, sir. True.
Okay, I mean, in terms of the floor plan, it's fairly straightforward, which is great. And you know, definitely the environment is one of my favorite things here. I'm glad that you got away in Illustrator. Um, in terms of the section, I mean, the shadowing, you see, the fact that you created your own shadow kind of
Yes, sir.
makes that look
It throws it off a bit, sir.
like, right. I mean, like literally, if you was in SketchUp and you just turn on shadows and adjust the opacity, I mean, bam, you have it there. So that is one thing. In terms of the interior, I think it's the depth.
Yes, sir. It might be, sir. I was realizing that as well, that the depth of field, I might have to adjust it, sir, because I'm not comfortable with the section either, sir.
Right, and not the depth of field. That's when things look blurry in the background. It's like the depth of the drawing. Like you see, the trick with this is that this is a taller building, so that you have much more play in your mimic to go from lower to higher. So to counteract that, you would have to make your depth, which is, you can adjust that in SketchUp literally, right?
Yes, sir.
You're right, your view depth, to let to let it appear a bit more deep, right? Because I think that would help. Then what I would argue is, if you could, in your section, if you could get a stairs in there. I mean, the stairs is such a big part of this whole thing. I don't quite remember where the stairs is in this, but I'm gonna leave that decision up to you, because, you know, in terms of a mimic, this was like a really key element, you know, the transition to the next floor.
Yes, sir.
And it gives the building so much depth. Like you can see how it's kind of like the ethos of this drawing. You can see how you can take a path to this room, or you can take a path here, and then you can take a path up and onto here. It's like the reason, the beauty about this section is just showing, communicating the circulation with depth. I think that's like the selling point in this image here. You know, I know it's a totally different design, but I mean, if you guys are doing a building and, you know, you're doing a housing project and you have the ability to show the vertical circulation throughout your building, like, I think this is a really interesting way to do it, because you experience all the circulation in one view. You know, that's in a 3D view as well. That's totally cool. And that's my favorite part about this image. So I don't know if you want to take that on, you know.
All right, I might.
But it's up to you, because this is your technique, you know. This is not mine. I mean, guys, the truth is that for the most part, most people pass this assignment easily, because you just need to mimic it. But the secret sauce in it is that this mimic belongs to you. This technique belongs to you. So if you master it, you get to use it. All right. So yeah, it's really just the shadows. One more thing I would encourage, like, I know you put the trees in there, which is great, and the tone matches and everything. But in your mimic, they found ways to integrate it in the building. So maybe you can find a way to do that. You can use your artistic license. Maybe this is a green wall. Maybe put a potted plant. You know, some way that you can kind of carry green into the black and white outline sketch. Because if you look on this drawing, it kind of stands out. You know, it's just the green and the drawing.
Yes, sir.
Right. So, you know, and you can creatively find a way to do that. All right.
All right, no problem.
Right. So definitely. But this, yeah, you need to like decipher this and keep the techniques down. And in terms of the communication section, that's pretty straightforward. All right, here, right. And I guess we see this one being used again. So that's good. That's good stuff. All right. let's keep it moving. All right. Candice.
Hi, sir.
All right. How are we doing?
Uh, we're okay. No section today, but I want to show you my floor plan.
No problem. That's the key thing. The key thing is, guys, we need to have the conversation. Let's see if I can. Oh, it's opening. Okay, here we go. So that would mean that, by the way, guys, if you don't get to show one of the mimics, then the last train that's leaving is the handy in. So just make sure to hand it in, and I'll just grade it there. All right. I'll try to infer the best I can infer from this. All right.
All right, sir. So I started by downloading the plans from the Google Drive, and then I put the plan in Illustrator to do the line weights, the doors, and the walls. And then I opened the Illustrator file in Photoshop and did all of the masking and all of the details and the textures and annotations. And then I put it back into Illustrator to get the wind, because I couldn't get it from Photoshop. It just wasn't happening. That did that to do the technique and then exported it from Illustrator.
All right. All right. And tell me what your intention is with the you need a workflow for this. How do you intend to tackle this one?
Sir, it would be similar to Donald's process to cut the section from Revit and then to take it into Photoshop and do most of the work there.
Well, you know what? I know that we are that we might have the programs that we use, but one of the key things about knowing about different programs is knowing the strengths and weaknesses, right? Like Revit is very rigid. If you can work with the rigidity of Revit, then kudos to you. SketchUp is more flexible, but the things that Revit can do, I mean, Revit is a BIM program and SketchUp is not, right? But then you have to now decipher this. How does it apply to what you are trying to achieve? So, as you notice in most of the tutorials, I promote using SketchUp because it is a little bit more flexible. Not to say that you can't achieve cutting a section in Revit. As you can see, I gave you guys a Revit export. The idea is that you should explore whatever programs you want to. The key thing to take away from this process though is learning about best practices, right? So you might end up struggling a little bit with how Revit is a little bit stiff, but if you need to get a elevation section view, then I mean, Revit can do that easy. If you were trying to get something more organic and more, let's just say, an interesting perspective view, and then Revit you might be fighting a bit more. So in terms of getting this, I think you can get it in Revit. You know, but I would say that if you have the ability where you don't have to use Revit. So for example, you have this file formatting, you have this 3D modeling, many file formats. I would tend to start from the flexible one first. Because sometimes, like, I might be familiar with Revit. I'm very familiar with Revit, maybe even more than SketchUp, because I don't use SketchUp that much. But if I needed to do something that is like not a BIM drawing, I would maybe draw for SketchUp more, even though I know more about Revit, because I know that SketchUp is just a little bit more flexible and I might need to flex a little bit. You know, in Rivet, there are all these rules you have to abide, and anytime you don't abide by it, you get a slap on the wrist in the form of a little error message that pop up in the lower right corner, right?
Right.
Right. Thou shalt not use this slab in this way or this wall in this way, you know? That's Rivet for you. Anyway, so you're saying your workflow is that you want to go with Rivet and all of that. What I would say though, please remember the what's it called? Remember the rubric for this presentation, right? Yes, I'm grading evidence, but the most important thing, you need to have that workflow diagram. But you have it in your head already, you just need to like diagram it real quick. Because in this presentation we're grading for the diagram, the actual diagram. We're grading for identifying the different features, and those are the elements that you cannot improve on in terms of grades. So make sure you have those. This is for everybody. Please make sure you have your workflow diagram at minimum, and you have, you know, you identify visualization features, or else I will have nothing to grade you on in the presentation. All right, in terms of your floor plan, I'm really loving the softness of this technique. I'm glad that you kind of recreated this floor. How you say you got the floor?
Sir, gymnastics, masking.
So is it that you drew it or you used
I used a texture from yeah.
All right, cool. And then you gymnastics to stretch it over the rest of the floor.
Yes, sir.
As you say, right? Which is no problem. And I like how you capture the trees and you basically recreated this. My only thing would be, if you remember, one of the criteria has to do with view and scale. So this would be a good example of demonstrating that. So for example, this view, or maybe it has to do with context, is that it's kind of a lake house building. You can see that it's partially over the water. I mean, remember guys, your imagination, you're free to go wild. This is not design studio where I'm saying, you know, your building must be X amount from X, Y amount. This is only, you have a lot of artistic freedom here. So I would make my water kind of do the same thing, you know, because I'm mimicking, you have free reign on the environment. You just can't change the building. All
so
right?
I was wondering how crazy I could go with it. So I just play safe and maybe put it in the background.
Yeah, man, you can go crazy as long as you don't like decide to take out this wall and move this window. You know, with the environment, yeah, you recreate it to match the building. So that would be one of the main things I would say that's there. But anything else, I would say he pretty much nailed it with the mimic with the floor plan. You know, I know I keep repeating myself, but you know, I'm loving these that you guys are mastering these techniques. It's just going to contribute to your own individual style. I'm glad that you didn't struggle through trying to get these arrows in Photoshop, right? Because Photoshop can be, you know, with the line tool, it's just, I think maybe Adobe personally made it annoying so as to force people to use another one of their product. You know, who knows the secret behind it? What I would say though is that when you get these lines in Illustrator, there is a tool that allows you to edit the cross section of the arrows. So for example, you can have an arrow that goes big to small like that, right? So when I say cross section, I'm talking about this area between here and here. What happens to the line for the duration of the length? So it starts off little, gets big, then comes back small. So you can actually choose these options in your Illustrator program, and that is how you can get your line to be a bit more like this, where you see that it's going from small to big to small. So I would say watch out for those, because this is just like one consistent thickness. All right.
All right.
All right. Yeah. That is pretty much, well, there's one more thing though. Yes. I don't see any soft shadows in this.
So I realized after.
I mean, one might argue that okay, above the water right here, but it's not like a significant feature that I would say soft shadows. These are, when you identify these aspects here, you're really talking about significant features, right? So texture, clean line work, 2D features, definitely. If anything, I would include I would make up another one. But you know what? I'm not going to tell you what it is. I'll leave you to discover it. Right? I mean, this is in fact work that you're supposed to do, right? But there is another one here that, when you look at this, how would you describe a feature of this? I'm going to leave you to figure that out. Because there's another one that lies in here, I think. You know what I mean?
All right.
Yeah. And remember, when I gave you these guys, it was just a guide. More exist. These are not the only major features that you can find in a illustration. All right, let's keep it going. I think I'm dragging my feet a little too much, so I'm going to step on the gas a little bit. Oliver. Hold on, is Oliver here? No, I don't see him in my list. By the way, guys, can you just message your classmates? Because I know that you guys just live good with each other, right? I'm hoping. Fingers crossed. So that is what now? Jessica and Oliver just message them saying, hey, you need to be here in order for me to grade your presentation. All right. Moving on, Nicole.
Yes, sir.
All right. I see. All right, I see you here. All right, let's keep it going. Oh, here's your workflow.
Okay. So I just open Mirrorboard and then my arrow will come up?
Yep. And I will see whatever you are pointing to. See, there you are.
Okay, wonderful.
Well, right. So everybody else who is watching me is seeing what you are saying.
All right, sir. So first, I attempted to export the PDF from Revit. It gave me a one-time, almost considered saving it from the Google Drive, but I got it. Did the wall outline in Photoshop. Found some brushes online and then made some trees. Added a grass texture, shadows, the usual stuff. And
in Photoshop, okay.
Yeah, everything was basically Photoshop for me. Even the arrows, I used the freeform pen tool, and because it was these, okay. And you were saying how I was gonna come up with it. So yeah, that's what I did.
So the freeform pen tool, it smooths your sketch for you when you draw,
yes,
right?
It does. Yes, it does.
You use the mouse?
Yes, sir.
Oh wow! Do you play a lot of first-person computer video games?
Really?
Oh, well, that certainly helps because I see how these arrows are looking free-forming. Granted, if you had to reproduce it on a larger scale, you might have had a warm time with that. But anyway. All right, cool. So it seems that you are comfortable in Photoshop, so you decided to do most things there.
Yes, sir. I'm a Photoshop girl.
All right, that's I fear for you when you say that. That's a good thing, but it can be limiting. So let's hope that you'll use the opportunity to spread your wings in this assignment to learn.
Yeah, I was thinking so. I haven't really I've started the section, but I haven't really reached far in it. But I plan to like include Illustrator for that. That's where I was gonna switch it up personally.
All right, cool. All right. Though it all right. Well, if you have the opportunity to force yourselves to do that, then yeah. I see opportunities for Illustrator. Let's see. Let me see your workflow. So you tell me about this workflow. This is, I guess, a proposed workflow.
Yeah, for my section. So I already cut the section in Revit. I was going to either the line weight in Photoshop or Illustrator. But for the trees, like the entourage people, I was gonna add that in Photoshop. Shadows, but for the communicative objectives, I was going to use Illustrator to try and get that done so it could match up with the line weights. But you know, still playing around with it, but proposed.
It's guaranteed that if you get these arrows in Illustrator, you're going to be like, I know I'm a Photoshop girl, but I'm sorry, I have to use Illustrator for arrows. It's that easy. All right, as it relates to your workflow though, there's one major concern I have, right? This part here. I was just speaking about the stiffness of Rivet, which I know that you probably know about if you're a Rivet user. It's an unfortunate truth, but it's a good thing because you need to be stiff when you're talking about regulations and making sure that your drawing is organized. That is great for Rivet, and Rivet does a good job of that. But when you're trying to be artistic, so for example, why I'm saying the concern is because this is a 1-point perspective, and I don't remember if Rivet can give you a 1-point perspective. It can give you a 2-point. It can give you a regular perspective, but a 1-point, I don't think so. So, I mean, you can probably adjust like your camera depth, but I would argue, why stress out yourself with that? Just cut the section in SketchUp. You know what I mean? Because I mean, you just you will struggle a lot less. Then you have to contend with all of these business here.
Yeah.
I mean, you're still going to get them in when you cut it in SketchUp. But the difference is they're a little easier to work with because SketchUp assigns to these triangles the same color that you choose in your SketchUp drawing. So when you get to Illustrator, what you can do is select by color, and then you're able to just hit delete or get rid of them one time, easy. So I don't think you should stress out yourself with trying to cut a section like this. I mean, right. If it's a 2D section like with Nicole, I think, was it Nicole or Candice? Then yeah, you can get away with it. But 3D section, worse, 1 point. Just go SketchUp and done. And guess what?
Sir, I see you.
Right. And guess what? I mean, you can try to use, like when you cut this section, this doesn't have a whole lot of line work in it. It has some line work here, you know. But you don't really have to manipulate the line work as such. So, I mean, if you see an opportunity to use Illustrator, like maybe these trees, I know you can get like PNG trees for Photoshop and stuff, you know, but the difference is when you have entourage that is in vector. I mean, it's just that you guys are not printing so often nowadays, but when you see the difference with printing, you'd be like, yeah, especially with printing, that's the way to go. So you can maybe try out using some vector entourage to see how that works out. You know, maybe some of this line work, you could maybe you don't need to really trace them because I mean SketchUp can give you this in one go. Now where you would need to experiment now is with these soft shadows. And I just know that because you said that you're a Photoshop girl, you are going to use a nice soft brush to kind of brush these shadows in.
Yes, sir.
So this is where I would maybe challenge you if you have the time or the need. Try to I don't know, try letting another program generate those soft shadows for you. Like a Lumion, like you could cut the section in SketchUp, go into Lumion and use one of the or even Twinmotion and use one of the hidden line or just turn everything to white. I'm trying to think of different ways. But like,
Yes, I could test it out in Lumion. I think I've done something like that before.
Right. And you have to remember one of the reasons why I will promote letting the computer generate soft shadows for you is that in terms of, remember we talked about the concept of reference editing, meaning when you change the source, your destination changes without you having to do over a bunch of work. If you have that 3D model in Lumion, you just save out another view. But I mean, if you custom created all of these shadows and I don't know, your wall extend or you, heaven forbid, your view change slightly, that would just be terrifying, right?
Yeah.
So, if you already possess the Photoshop skill, then maybe try to see if you could get these shadows generated that way. You can always carry it back in Photoshop afterwards. And I challenge you to use Illustrator to get these lines, to get these arrows. And that would be the last time you ever draw arrows again.
Photoshop arrows are not that hard, so it just seems like the same thing to me, but I'll give it a go.
All right. And tell me what your outcome is.
Okay.
All right. Let's continue. Let's move on. Janelle, didn't we do yours already? Is it that you submitted an updated one?
Yes, sir, because I couldn't get back into the board that I submitted last time. I just made a new one, and I also have the section I didn't set the last. Not completed it.
All right. So you're going to show your section today.
Yes, sir.
All right. All right. Okay. It's opening. Anybody message Oliver or? Oh man, no access to board. Did you make it public access? Did you open it up?
No, sir, how do I do that now?
Okay. In the meantime, while you do that,
I
remember
did it.
Say again?
I think I did it. Check, please.
Let me refresh. One sec. Let's see now. All right, it's coming up. All right. All right. I remember that one. I see you added even the pool.
Yes, sir.
Alrighty.
Mouse?
Yes, I'm seeing the mouse.
Alright, so So as I said, I haven't finished the section as yet. I still have some annotations to do. I can run you through what I've done so far.
Let's see. All right, proceed. So let me see your workflow.
All right, so yeah, so I cut the section in SketchUp because I just prefer to cut certain things in SketchUp because it's easier. And when I was using Revit, I realized it came in as a block, so I didn't know how it would cut. So I just used SketchUp. I imported the cut into Photoshop. So when I imported it, when I exported it, I did the cuts as black lines, then everything else as just regular, like black and white liner. And then I used the magic one to select the walls and the paint bucket to the gray color, and I used the stroke option in blending options to get the cohesive stroke around the cut. And I used magic one again to select the sky area and the ones that would be inside. And I just use a gradient, and then I faded out the top some more with the erase tool because the gradient didn't fade it as much as I'd like. And yeah, and then I just started putting out some entourage from a reference on Google, and I placed them where I wanted and scale them and put them under the yellow for the rooms. So for the rooms too, I only made the ones that would be like, so in the example I have, where the mimic that I chose is the exhibition rooms that have the soft yellow light in there. So where the outside has like a lot of natural light, so where the balconies are, I didn't do that. I just did the interior where there'd be more artificial light to try and mimic the same style of how the light moves. Yeah. So that's it so far, sir. And then what I have left to do is adding the annotations of the structural lines and the sun path and the other dimension and stuff.
So you're gonna do those in Illustrator. Most definitely. All right. So my only comment with this, I mean, this style is, relatively straightforward. As a matter of fact, with enough skill, in a part in, like, let's say Revit or one of these other programs, you could maybe try and achieve all of this in one program. Because it doesn't really require a whole lot, well, except the gradient and stuff. You could maybe even get all of this done in one, like in Revit.
Yes,
but
possible.
You wouldn't have the flexibility, and this is why we're doing this exercise to learn how to, like, hopscotch between programs to get what you want. My only thing would be a kind of a repeat statement from here, which is that in the one that you're mimicking, it kind of has this bridge, pool, water, right? And you have the artistic license, so why not just add back that pool, and then you would get that same kind of vibe here, and then it would be like more matching with the mimic.
Yes, sir.
Right, so that's the only thing with artistic license. In terms of the lighting and everything, all of that is good, the gradient and all of that. So it would just be the annotative work, which you already spoke about already. So you are on your way already.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Yes,
Good.
thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. And Campbell,
Yes, sir.
I'm seeing you here. I'm opening your thing. Give me one sec. Oh, Campbell, you need to make your board available for pub.
So you're mute.
Is it available?
Hold on, sir.
Okay.
So you can try it now.
All right, refreshing now. All right, good to go.
Yes, sir. So it's just the workflow and the beginnings, not anything completed.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. So workflow for your plan. Let me see this plan here. Oh, this is interesting. Mhm. So go on, you explain and tell me.
Yeah,
Or-
so for the mimic, I decided to go along with starting in Revit from the Revit model. I just changed the furniture, one or two of them, nothing big, and then I exported it to AutoCAD so I could get more use of the 2D lines. And then from AutoCAD, I went to Illustrator to fix up the vector line work because the mimic had mostly vector line works working with for the walls, anti-rods, furniture, 2D related stuff. And then I exported those vector line works to Photoshop to add the textures, which will be the grass and the trees and the walk pathways. And then I also exported from Illustrator on another layer, the trees, so I could invert it on Photoshop on its own layer. And this is just the beginnings of it.
All right, cool. Cool.
So I have a question. Just as how this floor plan is cropped, is it okay to keep it like this or I should crop it?
That's a good question, but let's come back to it.
Okay.
Your section is going to be interesting. What
Yeah.
is your plan to tackle that?
All right. So first, I would explore it. I don't want to say this is a final thought, but I would use the SketchUp model in this instead. When it comes to 3D and perspectives and sections, I rather to use SketchUp. Easier to manage, and it look much better. And after that, I'm gonna add the 3D furniture that I see in the background. Go to Photoshop just for the entourage, the trees, and the floor texture. And then everything else, I realized that it's best to use Illustrator for the line work. And also for the communication limit. That's the light, the ventilation.
All right, cool. All right, in terms of your plan, so yeah, I realized that the plan here is cropped, and the answer to your question is, yes, you can crop the plan, but you're going to have to you're going to have to you're going to have to like choose your environment to match the plan, because the main thing that you're mimicking here is really the techniques that's used in the environment. Let's duplicate this. So for example, is this yours? Yep. All right, so let's say you have this here and you have this here. Now you need to create an opportunity for, all right, like the pathways. Like I noticed that you've gotten the organicness in the pathways, but like these pathways, they have like a texture to it.
Yeah.
And the people that's on it even have a little bit of a soft shadow vibe that's going for it. It's almost like this drawing has two layers. It has a layer that is flat with no shadows, and then there's a section of this drawing that has like soft shadows to show everything. So you have to create that opportunity for this drawing. So for example, maybe you need a little bit more like context, right? So that you can create that kind of more pathways to give yourself the opportunity to put more of that green. And but here is the other trick now. Like when you're mimicking it, right? If you notice in this drawing, this line here is kind of how do you put it now? It's almost like a transition. It's like you're going from one dimension to another. Everything over here is flat, 2D.
Oh yeah.
Here has soft shadows along with the 2D. I mean, the purpose of this drawing is maybe in this drawing this was the focus, you know? And that's why they did it that way, because your eyes are pulled to this section more because it has more depth to it, whereas this is mainly flat. There's a little bit of shadowing, but it is very, very pale compared to the heavy shadowing that is down here. So it's like you have to create this opportunity in your drawing. You know? Yeah. So I don't know, maybe it could be that even in this drawing here, where you have, maybe there's a section here. Oops. I mean, you can't change the walls of the drawing of the thing, so that's fine. But maybe there's a section here that is like that focus section. Maybe this is too small. Maybe it needs to be like all of here. You know what I mean? Yeah, but you have to create that scenario using your environment where you can know where your pathways, like if you notice even the green where those pathways are. As a matter of fact, that crop that you were talking about, because if you notice there is no other green, well, there's a green on the other side. It's almost like this is the upper floor and the lower floor has like a garden.
Oh no, it's a ground floor.
Right. That is kind of the vibe or the way that this is being presented. It's kind of an upper floor, and then the lower floor is a garden. But they pronunciate that by making everything on the lower floor just have more deeper shadows. So that scenario of a lower floor you have to create. So maybe it could be that you are using the upper floor in your drawing right? And then the lower floor, which is like around here, because it's a double height space, could be, you know, you could add some pathways and stuff there. That's just one idea. Another idea is that you could just create your own lower floor. I mean, you can create anything you want with the environment. You just need to not change the building, right? So for example, maybe this is a bridge walkway here that leads to some platform here. And then, so maybe this entire space here and this entire space here is lower. You understand what I mean? Like you have to create that scenario where you can create these lower areas so that you can mimic this drawing. So you're gonna have to watch out carefully for that with this drawing, because the floor plan is easy breezy, but the difficulty in this lies in creating this opportunity. And you know what, like I think this is like a very interesting technique that you can master, because if you're doing, like, just imagine you're doing your housing project and you have a bridge that goes over a courtyard or something. Like, you know, showing it in this way, if you notice, there's like a heavy soft shadowing that's here. So it really lets it look like, okay, that courtyard is below. So that's like a really interesting technique, especially if you find the opportunity to use it in your design studio. Anyway, so that's what I wanted to point out for you to look out for.
I understand, sir.
All right, and in terms of your section, like I know this is gonna take some amount of investigation. What I would suggest, because remember, the only other way that you're going to send this to me is you just have to send in your final submission, right? So you won't be able to get the feedback in the presentation. So what I can do is just give you some advice from now. Like, you say you're going to use SketchUp, and I think that's a good choice. Look for an opportunity to, like, if you look at this view that you're mimicking, it's kind of have this right. This I'm going to say the word again, opportunity.
Okay.
Now, in your sketch, I don't think you have a courtyard, you know, but if you serve me right, you do have a sorry, I can't draw on your thing. You do have this kind of covering, and then you have like a double height space, and then this is like a balcony. So this is a person here, right? So you kind of have an opportunity with a double height space. I don't know if that can be used, but you want to choose a view that that kind of give you the opportunity to do this. That's the first thing, right?
Yes, sir.
In terms of the color work, like if you notice parts of the elevation are so for example, this is kind of like a pink, and then in here is kind of like a blue tint, and then there's another kind of a blue. So the color palette, maybe the 3D program won't give you the flexibility to just make half of a wall pink and half blue or whatever. So who will use the technique again? I don't remember who, but that, like the trees, I think it was it Nicole or Candice? Can't remember. But by having the trees and just drawing a shape below the trees and then coloring that shape that is below. So for example, you could just insert, let's get rid of some of these. You could just export this as just a black and white drawing, but then you just draw a shape like this. and then you fill that shape that's below the line work with a kind of pastel pink.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you can try techniques like that. But it's going to be important where you cut the section so that it, you know, to see the best way you can represent this, mimic this. If you just cut a section that is just horizontal in nature, it's going to be maybe a little bit more of a harder sell. Like I think the building does something like this, and then it's pretty much just straight. It's going to be a harder sell to cut it like that. Maybe you need to cut it the other way, or you can just cut a piece of it. Look for an opportunity that looks like that.
All right. Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so I only see a few more here. So 2 more I see. And if I'm not seeing Oliver and Jessica, then
I'm here, sir.
Sir,
here.
You don't see mine, sir?
Nope.
I sent it that wrong time.
You sent it in via the form?
Yeah, the form, yeah.
You sure you submitted under the right?
It's 2D.
Is the mirror board link? You're supposed to be submitting the mirror board link.
Yeah, I mean, I went to the website and it says submit to an image.
Yeah, but that's not what we're going through now is the mirror board link. That's a different submission button on the form. So scroll down on the form to where it says submit mirror board link here. That's where you have to put the link. All right, Mr. Time. In the meantime, Mr. Time.
Here, sir.
All right. I see your.
This is a reminder.
All right. All right. Are you loaded in on yours?
Sir, I'm on my phone, sir, so I'm not sure.
All right, no problem. I'm seeing your workflow for your plans. Are you seeing it? Can you work from the shared view?
Yes, sir. I mean, you need some work to. I'm gonna just explain like the expanded version. So picking the images, I wanted to pick things I never tried before. So for the mimic of the floor plan, I started with SketchUp, then cut a section, then I used the style and I changed the style. So I made the walls, the wall cut white, also changed the color of the floors. Then I exported the floor plan, the furniture, the line work and the shadows separately. Then drag them into Photoshop. For the patterns you can see on the sides, the checkered patterns and the horizontal patterns I created those in Illustrator. Then I used some textures, changed the hue and saturation to match the color of the original plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I just used the magic wand to select the floor plan, then deleted what needed to be deleted. Then I lowered the opacity of the furniture, overlaid with a white layer.
All right.
Then I carried in the trees, turned them white, added a soft dissolve feature to them, and
all right.
then I lowered the opacity of the shadows.
All right, this is looking great. That's looking great. All right, and I see that you have the communication section, the communication objective there as well. Cool.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Let's just go to your section. Interesting.
Originally I wanted to cut it in SketchUp, but it wasn't giving me the angle I wanted, so I decided to use it instead. Then I exported it I exported it as a PDF. Then I bring it in Illustrator. Then I deleted the lines that were necessary. Then I created the walkway and the path and the section for the grass and the wall at the back with Illustrator also. Then I carried it to Photoshop, carrying the textures, distort them, fix them to the walls, delete what needed to be deleted. For the clouds, brought in a regular image of a cloud, then I turned it into a silhouette, and I copied it, changed the colors, and merged them together, then fade them at the bottom.
All right, cool.
Yeah. But so the shadows are missing though. So not as well. Yeah, and the entourage.
The shot, yeah, and the shades. Those
Yeah.
are, right, because let me just start on this. So, for example, like the color tone is like there. The foundation of that is definitely there. And there are little key things. For example, this heavy outline. I noticed that it's there as well. That is great. Yes, these trees would have shadows, which you point out already, but then there is a tone. So, for example, this side of the wall should have a different tone than this side, because the whole light kind of reading flat. You know what
Yes,
I
sir.
mean? So yeah, so just to change that tone a little bit. Even on the inside, like I can kind of see the tone there. Like for example, this wall face here.
Yes, sir. I was supposed to make the walls lighter.
Right. And it kind of letting like these parts read as one flat thing. So so there is that. Also inside the buildings though, they are like flat white. But I notice you have a texture in there. That's one of the things that kind of throwing it off a little. You notice?
Yes, sir.
Right. So you definitely want to match that as quick as, I mean, that's even easier. So yeah, I mean, I see that inside. I mean, I think it's really just like the tone of the image that lets it look a bit gray. But I mean, it's really just I'm using this as closer reference, you know?
Yeah.
I know that you draw these lines in Illustrator, but I think it should have a little bit more like perspective, like it wants to be coming that way and that way. Oh, that's too high. Yeah, it look a little bit too parallel. But that's just, I don't know if I'm interpreting that wrong. No, that's a minor thing. The other major thing now is going to be your clouds, and I noticed you gave it a good attempt, right? The gradient and everything is there. You nailed that. But the cloud representation, which is a major element in your building, like that is how this is done. Like for example, the technique that you used to achieve this was more of, okay, so I have this here. I'm going to copy it down below, make it a new shade, then copy it down below. You understand?
Yes, sir.
So that's the kind of technique there. But this technique is a little different. It's more like whatever the shape is up top is not the shape it is below. So it's not a copy. You understand? And then
Yes,
you
sir.
have another shape in the middle. None of these are copied. Like these are all unique, let's call them layers. Whereas over here, you have a kind of duplicated layers. But these are not duplicated. They're like individual, like layers of white and blue or whatever. So like those, that would, I would say, because it's such a central piece. And guess what? It don't even have to have the same shape, you know, like the fact that your sky went down and then up and then, you know, that don't even really matter. It's just the technique that was used to create it is a little different. For example, these birds are different than these birds, but what you have here is fine. You nailed it. Because the technique used for the birds were like a black silhouette and you did a black silhouette. So the technique that's used for the clouds is not what you have here. That's why it's looking so different. All right?
Yes, sir.
But I'm glad to see this because I remember seeing this image and I was interested to see how you would have created this mimic. So that's good. Like these line work definitely. I mean, you said you went into Illustrator to do it?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to, instead of trying to like draw the line, what I'm going to advise you to do is to just draw one line and then change the thickness of the line and then change the profile of that thickness. And then you will get something nice.
All right, sir.
All right, because this looks a little too weird. It's not smooth enough. You understand?
Yes, sir.
All right, but definitely like this is pretty much like almost there, and like I'm loving this technique. You should definitely try to see where else you can use this kind of technique. Don't forget to put representations of the text.
Yes, sir.
All right, so you are mimicking even the annotation aspects as well. All right. All right. Good work, Robert. Good work.
Yeah, thanks, sir.
Akeem Smith.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Smith. All right, just opening the work.
You see mine now?
Yep. All right.
All right, so for the workflow, sir, as it relates to the technique that I'm trying to mimic, the first thing I did was to go into SketchUp and actually cut the plan from the section tool, and then I imported it to Revit as a DWG. Then after doing that, I exploded the DWG so it could be editable, so you could actually delete certain lines from the model. And then after that, I basically changed some of the furniture and add some more furniture to it. And then after that, I just exported it to Photoshop and then add the necessary textures and some additional features. And then after that, I linked the file to Photoshop and then add the arrows and stuff for the communication part.
All right, cool. All right, good stuff. I like how it looks very clean and neat. I think you pretty much nailed it in terms of the tone and everything. The only thing I would say is the line work for your furniture is a little bit heavier than the Mimic, like
Yes,
you
sir.
notice. It's a little lighter, maybe just thinner lines or something. This grass texture is nice. Like you should definitely think about reusing that. Definitely. Yeah, this is pretty cool. This is pretty cool. All right, let's go to the section.
Well, the section I just haven't completed it as yet, but yeah, work in progress. So I did the same thing, basically the same thing that I did with the plan, as in cut the section, then carry it over into Revit to add some additional things to it.
Hold
And
on.
then
You cut this section, you import this section into Revit. Oh, so you cut it in
SketchUp.
What did you export as? A DWG file. Got it.
Yeah, DWG file, and then I
Right.
exported that DWG file so it could be editable. And then after that, it's the same process. Carry it over to do some line work and add the context in the background in Revit, and then export it to Photoshop. But I started working on the texture for the ground plane and stuff. Yeah, and that's where I reached so far in the section.
All right, cool. So you're comfortable in Revit.
To an extent, yeah.
Okay, I think as much. So this is what you're heading for. Well, most of the texturing you can get with some nice brushes and stuff, and this kind of heavy black texturing. Yeah, I can shadows. I can see how you can achieve that in a 2D like fashion. So yeah, I think you're on your way. You're on your way. You're on your way. What I would say to look out for is there is, I don't know if it's maybe just the design of this building, but the background walls and furniture. Well, I don't see any furniture, so maybe you want to leave it out. And
yeah, that's why I didn't. That's why I didn't put any furniture. Well, there's some furniture here, but I deleted most of the furniture outside because I didn't see majority of furniture in there. It's just mostly the lighting that actually
the rooms are empty. Maybe lighting from the ceiling, right? So so yeah, so you would have to make sure you watch out for that. You know, maybe you have to just empty those rooms to make it have a similar kind of feel, you know? Also, the other thing to watch out for is the scale, right? Remember, there's a criteria called scale. It's almost like this, the ratio of the building. So for example, let's say this is the building here, the building proper, and then you have this ratio here, and then you have this ratio here. So meaning that, you know, and this is the frame. So your building kind of sits kind of within the frame. It's not filling up the entire frame. So that's why I'm saying.
I understand.
Right. You know, maybe this would be a little longer all the way to there. You know what I mean? So that the.
Yeah, I understand. So.
Right. So watch out for the view for that. All right. All right. Good stuff. You're definitely heading there. All right. Cool. Yes, Ajawi, I'm seeing your submission now, but we don't reach to you yet. We are now doing Akeen, sorry.
No, sir. We finished still, sir.
Sorry.
Yeah, that was it.
Hold on. My bad. We just did Akeen, so we're going to Ajawi now. Yeah. Let me mark this so I can keep track. So many lists. All right, so this seems like the last one for today. Hold on, did I do?
Oliver is here now.
Oh, right, I was just about to ask. Oliver and nobody don't get Jessica yet? Oh man. All right. All right. Guys, remember to put your I just keep remembering every time I see it. To put the fact that you have identified the features, right? If I don't see it, I can't mark it, right? So you need to just make sure that that is on your drawings. All right, Andre.
Yes, sir. So, identify the areas. So I actually added this to your board as well, right? But then I utilize Revit, so I exported from Revit, and this is how it came out. I had to clean up all of this. So once I exported from Revit, I imported it into Illustrator, where I cleaned up the line work and then added the walls within Illustrator. After that, then I added trees.
Oh, is it still in Illustrator?
No. Well, I tried within Illustrator. It didn't work out so well because this is actually Illustrator. So I had to move it over to Photoshop to control the trees, how they look. Because it was a bit difficult to work in Illustrator with it.
Cool.
I went back to Illustrator to add the floor and the arrows, right? I added arrows here and the shadows, added the shadows in Illustrator as well.
Oh, so those shadows are in Illustrator that I'm seeing there.
Come again?
The shadows that I'm seeing there are from Illustrator.
Yes. So I added the shadows within Illustrator, right? But I moved back to Illustrator because it was a bit difficult to add the floor because everything, the layers were kind of overlapping too much. So I decided to come back to Illustrator.
Cool.
So I moved to Illustrator with the furnitures as well. So I utilized the technique that you showed us in the last session, practical session, which is the masking. So I utilized the mask to really get the furnitures by themselves because all of it around it would have been white and other colors. So I utilized that. For the trees, I still kept it in Photoshop to be able to add the shadows and the landscape. So for the grass, I actually added that within Photoshop, utilizing the brush, right? I moved across, I was able to add the shadows for the trees with Photoshop by just making black and then modifying it to that outline, right? Then still in Photoshop, move back to Illustrator to add the floor, the rest of the floor, and finish off render from Illustrator. So I exported, the final export was from Illustrator because once I went to Photoshop, it was becoming pixelated. Once I zoom in, so I decided to go back to Illustrator because it kept the line rates better. So that would have been what I did here. As for the section, I'm not so much finished with it. I started out with Revit to get the 1 point perspective, but I couldn't add the materials, so I decided that well, I started to modify, but I decided that I'm going to have to change it a little. So I'm still trying to figure out how I'm gonna get it. But I figured that I'd have to add the textures to Illustrator and the line work for the wall within Illustrator. So I'm still working on it.
All right. All right, cool. Well, the first thing I would say is did you have Illustrator and Photoshop linked? Because you're doing a lot of back and forwarding. Did you have
Yeah, actually it me. So most of the times when I change stuff, actually.
Okay, good. Because it would have been a nightmare to be importing and saving and importing every time. You know, based on the amount of time.
I'm actually working on the other one, so it was
all right, that's good. I'm glad you're using that that technique. You know, the major, I mean, the trees and the tone of the image, you have a general idea of the trees and the tone. The tone of the tree tone, I should say, the tone of how the trees are used. However, the floor, like, I don't know if it's maybe because I have a low res, but this is more of a gray, shades of gray floor plan. Whereas what you have going on now is like a kind of a browny kind of.
I mean, I never wanted to use the same color, but because I was trying to, I was actually trying to use wood, so I actually got a wood pattern on it.
Right. So remember, the objective of this is you are selecting a piece of work that, in your opinion, is successful. So you're not trying to change it or add to it. Understand? So that's what I was saying earlier. I think with another student. I remember which one. The creativity is not an aspect. It's not a criteria here. I mean, you have to be creative to interpret these techniques, but meaning that you're not supposed to add anything to enhance, quote unquote. You are to mimic. Right? So for example, you have mimicked the tone of the trees. It's kind of semi-transparent. It looks that way. I think you have that as well. But like the floor and the furniture, if you notice that the furniture is just a line outline, so you are mimicking 100%. Now the walls, you kind of got the walls. It's not exactly white, but black, but like the direction that is heading is fine. The more critical thing I would say that you have to look out for is your shadow angles, right? So for example, you know, you can kind of see the shadow angles kind of going this way, right? So that is something that so that should really be going like this way. Like literally, if it's going in another way, it's not the tone of your image is going to, the feel of your image is going to change. As a matter of fact, you know what? Flip the drawing because you already have these shadows already drawn. Just turn it around. No, then it's going to be going the other way. You have to flip it. You have to literally flip it, right? But you want to have those shadows going in the same way. And this is going to be super important. I'm glad that we meet at this point. Because when you guys are doing Mimic 3 and 4, shadow angles is going to be very important for that. Just changing the shadow angles alone changes the look of the drawing, of the illustration. So I want you to watch out for that, along with the other things that we mentioned, the tone and the furniture, all right? In terms of your section, I think you might be giving yourself a little too much work here. I mean, right away, that looks just like that. So you don't even have to go any further. Like you don't need nothing there. So that's literally all you need, right? You notice that? All right, cool. Meaning what? You're trying to determine how you're going to get it to look so real?
Yes, sir.
Well, that's an easy solution based on the other presentations that we've seen happening. You realize that some of us has to go investigating into photorealistic applications, right? As a matter of fact, that should be one of the features that you have down here, because it is this aspect of your image is photorealistic. And that's why the textures look so. So meaning that you have to go into a program that can give you photorealistic shadows and textures. So you're talking about Lumion Twinmotion, or if you want to venture into Max or Cinema 4D or what, I mean, you have to go into a program, or V-Ray for SketchUp. That is also an option. Revit right out of the box. No, but Revit can connect to all of these programs. I think there's even a V-Ray for Revit too. It's not that popular. But the point I'm getting...
Revit, that's the problem.
Say again?
I have to figure. Yeah, I can't apply any material in Revit as it is. So
right. So you would carry the model into that rendering program and apply the material there. Right? So, and then you would have to watch your view. So for example, I mean, you would have to angle your view in such a way. So ignore all of this that is down here. You would be angling your view in such a way that that is what you're seeing. I don't know if you can make it out from my drawing here, because I'm using the mouse and it's just really horrible, right? So like literally that's all you need, and then this part here would need to be in, you need to render that from a program that can give you photorealism. And then this part here, that's, so you're really going to end up with render passes. So if you watch the last tutorials that we do about render pass, you save out one image that has something, and then you use the exact camera angle for the other thing that is right on top of it. So all of this 2D work would be, you know, maybe in Revit or CAD, whichever one. And then this 3D is going to come in from Lumion or Twinmotion. All right, so look out for that. All right, now that is the final name that I'm seeing here. So what I want to say, guys, is remember
me, sir.
Oh, right. Sorry, yeah, Oliver, you are here. Yes.
Sir.
All right.
So, sir, before we begin, I missed a couple of the first classes, and I didn't realize that the model was provided for us. So,
so you use your own.
Yeah.
All right, no problem. So this was your model that you selected?
Yes, sir.
All right, we'll here what you do. Don't spend time to do them over. Move on to the next thing.
All right, sir.
All right, and then we
using. So the next thing is
actual model.
Okay.
Using the actual model, and then what you do is, if you have time, then you can update the model, right? So you can still get the passing grade with this model, because I will allow you to do that, but you wouldn't be able to. There would have to be some amount of deduction because it's not the model that is given.
Yes, sir.
So if you have, but I don't want you to chase that down now, because we have to move on to the other two mimics. It's too late to go back to start from the beginning. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
Right. All right. So let's see the technique.
So I started in Revit. I then took the model from Revit into Illustrator, where I added the colors for the floors, then brought it over into Photoshop, where I added all the furniture, gave the furniture a drop shadow, but then brought it over into, brought it back into, from Photoshop, I added the furniture, the grass, and the trees and the drop shadows. Then brought it back into Illustrator and added the different arrows for the circulation. And then for the section, it's kind of the same process, except I added rivets. So from, I added Lumion, sorry. So from Revit, I brought it into Lumion, where I added the materials to get that red brick color. And then I added a filter to give it that kind of painted look. Then from there, I brought it into Photoshop, where I put out the building, added the mountains in the background, then brought it into Illustrator, filled in the walls, showed the ground plane cut, and added the sun parts and the birds. You're muted, sir.
My bad. All right, so the first thing is okay, in terms of the floor plan, right? The tone, so for example, I think you nailed the tone of the flat tones, but there's also and two other textures that are used here and another tone. So even though it's a different plan, you would have to find ways to use them. So maybe like the living room could get that tone. Maybe the garage, you know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
So the fact is that the floor plan has about 4 different floor textures, and this has 1, right? Of course, the most evident thing is that this has a kind of a faded business around it. So you would want to mimic that as well, right? Because in the thing we talk, right? Remember, in that presentation I was showing earlier.
No problem.
Remember to mute, guys. We were talking about some of these criterias. So, for example, when you talk about mimic an entourage, context, or environment, that's what we're kind of talking about. All right.
Yes, sir.
All right, I think okay, here you are. Right. So now here is the thing that I need you to watch out for, right? I mean, those 2 things I showed you are easy to spot. So let's talk about the things that are harder to spot. Notice that these lines don't have any shadows on them. So this doesn't have any soft shadows happening for the walls. All right, these are just flat walls. The furniture and the plants have a little teeny kind of soft shadow here. So then what we have here is that your walls has a kind of a big soft shadow. You can see that?
Yes, sir.
So there would be no soft shadows on your walls. And your furniture has soft shadows, but your soft shadows are very big. So for example, if we look on some of the furniture here, I mean, there is soft shadow, but you can see that, you know, you're not even seeing, you're like barely.
It's very slight.
You know, like very slight, exactly. It almost looks like an outline. So the intensity of the shadows that you add will be needed to do that. You know, you want to fix things like scale, like intersecting with stuff and all of that. So that is one thing that you can look out for, right?
Yes, sir.
Remember that you're supposed to have a communications image that you are now mimicking, communicating either active or passive ventilation or circulation. So that is where these arrows should be sourced from. You can't make them up. You have to get them from an image.
I have it, yes, sir, but I didn't get added to
Right. So you need to add
the presentation.
Also, I'm saying again to everybody, remember to put where you have identified the visualization features, right? So, let me just find one that had it. So, yeah, even like what we just saw here with Andre, where the visualization features were identified. And the visualization features are, you could say, the major defining characteristics of this image. All right. One sec. So let's go back here. So now. All right, so those were the things with that. So even these plants, yeah, they have shadow, but the shadow here is major. But if you look on the plants you're mimicking, it's very like it's just a slight kind of a shadow there. All right, so the intensity is something to balance. Now with this now,
yes, sir.
Say again?
Yeah, understood.
Right. Okay, so with this one, I like how you kind of match the backgrounds. That's great. The thing to look out for, like I know that this is textured, so that's why you put the texture there. The textures, okay. Let's leave the texture for now. The main thing is the view, right? So if you look at this image here, like maybe it's like a 1-point perspective, that maybe that point is down low. So it's like more low than it is higher. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
Whereas with I think it's kind of the same thing, but it almost seems a little too low. I don't know. You know what? This is a taller building, so I'm going to leave that as is. It just the view just seems a little bit kind of low. The view, the perspective view. In any case, you said that put the section in Rivet. Okay, so you did this in Lumion. So where did you do the texturing?
In Lumion, sir, the color sketch filter.
Okay, all right, cool. Yeah, I know that one. Yeah, so like when you're in Lumion, you can play around with the view a little bit more. Now, the one thing that is maybe harder to spot is that all of your outlines here are white. You see them?
Yes, sir.
So this has an outline line work. This kind of has one, but you can't really see that much. But all of the line work would need to have a white outline infill, not white outline along the edges. Right? That is what is seen here. And yeah, I think the texture is bordering a little bit on too heavy. I don't think you can adjust that in Lumion. So I'm not sure how you're going to tackle that one, but that is minor. The major things are mainly the outline and the view. Everything else I think you captured. So I think that's fine. You also want to look on your sun angle. I can't figure out if this is a shadow angler is part of the building. I'm wondering if this even has a. Yeah, it don't look like this doesn't have shadows
part of the
in it.
building.
Yeah, so it doesn't have shadows in there. So no shadows.
Okay.
All right. Right. If you want to turn off shadows in a 3D program, just turn the sun off and just use ambient lighting only. And then again, you're going to get soft shadows with that. So you might have to experiment a little bit. But you definitely want to turn off your sun. And you don't want to get shadows.
Right, sir.
Right. All right. That's about it. So, I would just look at things like, the way how the shading is on the base. It's a little bit lighter. It's more of a gradient kind of flowing from the top. So you have to play around with some brushes a little bit. You kind of notice it kind of heavy at the top and light as it fades down. Little things like that. You'd have to play with. So as I said with yours, don't bother go and redo the whole thing from scratch. Just work with this and submit it. And when you focus to the sections, just use the new model. And if you have time, you can edit it if you want to be eligible for the full marks. All right?
Yes, sir.
All right. I do believe that is
Hello.
it. Is there any more?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Hutchins, are you seeing my mirror board link? Because I submitted it.
Oh, hold on. Hutchins, we never do yours.
No.
Why not? Oh, I think when I reach yours, I didn't see a name in the meeting. All right, Hutchins. Tell me about your workflow.
So basically, I selected the images to mimic for both the technique and the communication objectives. I opened the model in Revit. I imported the level 1 into Photoshop as a PDF. Before I imported it, I was making a decision if I should add in the hard shadows for like where the furniture is from Revit or from Photoshop itself. So I added in shadows and the circulation arrows for the texture. As you can see from the original Mimic, I added a plan of a tree to add in somewhat of the textures on the floors as I created basically the tree plan as a brush and turned on the opacity. I then focused on the texture for the floors as there are 3 different types of textures in the original Mimic to add in. After that, I played around with the hue and saturation to try and get it as close to the original as possible. And finally added in the circulation arrows from the communication objective.
And what you added that in?
For the arrows, I actually used Google Slides and just add in the arrow.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
All right. So, all right. And what about the section now?
For the section, same process in regards to selecting the Mimic and opening it in Revit for the 2D cut. I made a decision in regards to where I should have it cut, like longitude or the shorter cut. I imported it in Photoshop. I added in textures, especially for the earth. for the building, for where it's cut. I downloaded some images from the internet to use for textures in regards to the earth and for the sky. I added in the entourage and birds and trees. I also played with the hue and saturation to try and get it as close as possible to the original. I then added in, for the communication objective, I added in the passive cooling diagrams by using the normal wind direction and adding in by I actually added 2 layers and turned one of them to orange and the next one to blue, and then use the eraser tool to basically kind of have like a gradient from blue to the orange.
All right, cool. All right. Well, this is the thing with this floor plan. Like, you definitely wouldn't be able to get those shadows in Revit, because Revit is going to give you a knife edge shadow, right?
Yes, sir.
So I think your best bet to do that would be having to do it manually in Photoshop, right? That's
Yes,
the easier.
sir. I tried to add it in with the Photoshop as best as possible, where you can see by the furnitures. But that was mostly for like the living room, and then you
Right.
can just see like small amounts for the
And you see,
background.
shadows are different from ambient shadows. So for example, like soft shadows. The furniture has soft shadows, but this is a very definite shadow that you're seeing here. Now, you have the perfect opportunity to create that shadow because of this front part here. You could easily have done a kind of a shadow thing like that, right? So you can create the shadow. You have the opportunity to do it. You understand? Using that opening at the front. It's not about the furniture having the shadow. The furniture just has a little soft shadow to it, and you've already achieved that. But
Okay,
it's
fair.
almost right. It's almost as if you have cut the model in half and allow the sun to kind of shine into the model. And that's how you would have, that's how you would have gotten these shadows going like that. And you probably could just get away with showing it just over the entrance part and you get away with it. Anyway, that's the things that are easy to spot. What is harder to spot is that, okay, I think you started.
The lights.
When you say the lights, what do you mean?
The glow right here.
Right. You started to speak about that by finding ways to use brushes to kind of mimic the uneven tone of the floor. I see you trying to do it here, but it's more of large swabs of light and shade. So I think that would more achieve for the
entrance.
Right, the term for it is almost, the term is ambient occlusion or ambient lighting or soft lighting, but soft lighting don't only exist along walls, it exists in open spaces as well. So that is what you're really trying to mimic. And it's almost like you're trying to mimic that where the wood is. So that is what gives the wood a kind of this, make it looks like it shine. Because if you look on it closely, you can kind of see, like here is very light, and then it, here are light dark. You know what I mean? There's like a slight smudging of the light over those
Yes,
areas.
sir.
Right. So that is what will make your wood not look so flat. And you know, you'd need to, and that is just more like custom digital painting. You know, that's not 3D, that's just raw painting it in Photoshop. Right? So you have to do a little trial and error for that. As for the
Okay, sir.
section, yeah, as for the section, I think you pretty much nailed it. The texturing and everything is fine, and you know, I mean, it's not highly complicated, but I think you nailed with showing the context and the people inside, and then the glass. I like how you have identified how the glass works there, right? And in this case, yes, you can definitely place birds because there are birds in your mimic, right?
Yes, sir.
That one wasn't for you, it was for the other persons who placed birds and they wanted the opportunity to place birds. Anyway, all right. So yeah, so good job with this section. You're gonna have to work on those little details with the plan, but you're almost there with the plan. All right. Okay, guys. So remember, what I would say is, remember when you see your grades, just remember that as it relates to the mimic, those grades can be upgraded when you submit your final work. If I don't see any work, then I will use the grade that I gave you from this presentation. All right, for those of you maybe just to clarify that. All right, so I believe we made it through our first two mimics. We just have a little bit more tips to go through, maybe some shared experiences. We will do that in our next class. And then I'm going to play this a little by ear. I'm going to get what is on your studio schedule, because we are going to have the next two mimics again. I want to give you guys some time to get that done. Tentatively, we should be able to get that done in the next 2 weeks. So you will have like pretty much a week to kind of do the other two mimics, and then we present them again in this very same fashion. And that will be it for presentations for assignment 1. And we can start to look on the other major project, which would be the measured survey. We are looking forward to doing our field trip at the end of October. I can't give you a date yet because the places that we're going to go, they need to give us confirmation, but it's around town and it's near, and I don't even think we'll need a bus. Right? So it's not any study tour, nothing like that. But in the meantime, you can kind of get your brain mentally ready to the fact that we're going to go on a site to do measuring. All right, and that would be another major component in this module. All right. Before we do the measuring, we're going to talk a little bit about teamwork and techniques to measuring and all of that stuff. All right. So that is what is coming up. All right, so I believe that's it for class today. I'm really excited about all of the different techniques that I've seen from everyone. I hope you guys reuse these techniques. Well, as a matter of fact, you have to reuse it for one of your assignments. You have to show me evidence that you have used it in a studio project. But that assessment don't come yet. That is not something that you have to specifically do in Advanced Computing 1. You're going to already do it in Design Studio. It's just that you're going to use one of your techniques and you're going to submit that in Advanced Computing 1 to say, hey, I've used my floor plan technique or my section technique or whatever technique you created to create this work here. I call that an easy 20% grade, right? Anyway, we'll talk about that. That will be our last assessment activity for this module. So that is coming further down. So I guess if there are no more questions, I will see you guys again on Wednesday. All right, where we go through some more tips that will help you in your next minute. Okay, guys, so take care.
Yes, sir. You too.
All right, cool.